Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as I always say. And, do you think that there's a goat man lurking in California? What about another creature in Arizona? Those are the two encounters I have for you today. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, then definitely pull up a stump with me, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. So in the summer of 2014, I had just bought a DSA Arms FAL Voyager from a pawn shop, and I happened to be out on the Mogollon Rim in Arizona with my buddy. I'll call him Dylan for the sake of this. He bought a Mosin M9130, your generic rifle. We were up there for a 3-day camping trip in the woods. So, day 1, we get up there and we set up camp. Nothing happens. We just talk, hang out, and shoot the targets that we brought. I brought 3 magazines and about 120-ish bullets, and he had 2 extra magazines just in case something went down. So we go to bed, and we hear some rustling outside. Now neither of us minded this because we were thinking that maybe it was an elk or a deer that traveled through our camp, which happens a pretty good amount of times out here. So, day 2. This is when some freaky stuff starts to happen. I see a whitetail about 50 meters away from our camp. I take out my binoculars to try and get a good look at it. I see that this thing has no tail, and I think, what the hell? We stare at each other for a good 5 minutes. Then it hits me. This is no deer. I pay close attention to the Navajo when they tell me about stuff I should be wary about up in the woods, like sacred ground and stuff like that. I take 2 warning shots at it. It just keeps walking toward me. Dylan walks up to me and says, "Man, what the hell? If you kill that deer, we're gonna be screwed." I say, "Dylan, that's no deer." He catches my drift because he's Navajo. He says something in Navajo and takes a shot with his gun. This thing, I kid you not, gets up on its hind legs and sprints off. We decide to pack our stuff and just leave. We're not risking it. We go to his uncle up on the res in Ganado and tell him what happened. He tells me to call my parents and for Dylan to do the same. I just tell my dad that I'm going to be staying in Ganado because Dylan got sick and I'm his ride home. Dylan's uncle brings out a K98K and covers the bullets with ash and then loads it. Dylan's uncle tells us to answer the door to nobody that night, and we are all fueled by coffee and paranoia. Someone knocks on the door. It says it's Dylan's mom. Mind you, Dylan lived in Tucson with his mom. There's no way she'd drive all the way up to Ganado. We trade looks. Dylan calls his mom, and she says that she's at their house. Dylan says, "No, you're right here in front of the uncle's house." That's when she hangs up, and his uncle swings open the door and shoots it with his 98K. It lets out the most gut-wrenching scream I've ever heard, worse than any animal you can think of. We all eventually pass out after hearing random bangs and knocks the rest of the night. The next morning, we go over to a shaman's house, and he gives us blessings and a charm that was supposed to keep those things away. I lost it over the years, but screw me, I guess. After that, I take the drive back home. That's about 3 hours. Now, a skinwalker is a shapeshifter. Its normal form is a Native American shaman, or a warlock, or a witch. Here's some info on them. If an animal has no tail, and it seems to look like it naturally has no tail, it's more than likely a skinwalker. Never say its name out loud in the desert, forest, or especially at night. Trust me. The only way it can harm you is if you look at it or talk to it. The only way it can get into your house is if you let it in. I have a weird story. I've disputed in my head what happened, but my skepticism hasn't really kept me from wondering. So, here goes. I was 18 at the time, and I was fresh out of high school. I grew up in Southern Cali for most of my life. My parents and my grandparents used to live up in Northern California. My parents inexplicably moved here when I was a few years old. I faintly remember visiting my grandparents. So, in the summer of 2012, before freshman year starts, I was going to college. I planned a last hurrah. I proposed going up north for a week and camping. I remember my mom asking me where I was headed up north, and that I noticed that she tensed up a bit. She said, "All right, here's some extra gas money. Have fun," and walked off. And I was thinking from then on that my parents were acting weird. The day of the trip, I was loading up my crappy SUV, my duffel bag, lanterns, tents, stakes, cooler, etc. My father steps out. He says, "You going to be sleeping in those?" And he points to the tents. I say, "Yeah, what other option is there?" He says, "I don't feel right having you sleep exposed in those things. You remember Grandpa's place?" I tell him that I vaguely remember it. I do know that my father had the place put under the care of a house sitter, free of charge for lodging, utilities, and amenities as long as they maintained the place. He then asked if I was going alone. I told him no. He stepped back inside, and he comes back out with an address and a Plano case. And I knew what was in there, but he had 3 Plano cases. He said, "This is for bears, whatever you encounter in the woods, and feel free to do some plinking if you want to. Ammunition cans are included." I commented that there was a lot of ammo for just a week of camping. He shrugs it off, laughs, and I say bye to him and Mom. So there's 8 people on the trip. There's Garrett, Britt, Tay, Frey, Herb, Amory, Elle, and me. My car can't accommodate everyone, so we have a second one. We agree to meet up at this fast food place near the I-5 on-ramp that'll run up through the state. The drive up north is very uneventful. We're listening to music, joking around, and Garrett yelling the song lyrics to the songs out the window to the people that we were passing. In plenty of time on the road, Garrett is riding shotgun. He eventually asks me where we're headed. The place is called Ruth Lake. It's a sizable body of water. You can look it up if you want. It's a heavily forested region and sparsely populated. It's an absolute mess of forests and back roads, most of them needing 4-wheel drive cars or off-road to traverse. The place is a 10-hour drive total. We arrived by nightfall, and we were all exhausted and sore. The country club or cabin, whatever you want to call it, had all the lights on. The house sitter was still there. I never really interacted much with him. Mike was his name, and he was older than all of us. We all dump our stuff onto the floor, and we would sort it all out in the morning. Mike asked how my dad was, and we talked about that for a bit. Everyone called dibs on beds, sofas, and recliners that they wanted to sleep on. Mike had his own separate room. Our dinner was pre-packaged that night, too. Being a bunch of young adults, we stayed up playing cards, swapping, and reminiscing old memories. Mike had long gone off to bed. Herb was complaining that there was no Wi-Fi, and I asked him, "What the hell did you expect out here?" By the way, Herb is kind of a weird guy, but he's the brother of Tay. I probably should have clarified relationships earlier. Elle and Amory are siblings. It's time to hit the hay. There's only 2 restrooms with showers. We let the girls go ahead of us. Us 4 guys are in the living room chilling, talking about what to do tomorrow. I propose that we hit the trails. A sudden scream erupts from the restroom the girls were showering in. Everyone rushes to the location. Elle and Amory burst out, clinging to their towels. Everyone's a little shaken up. There's a foul stench coming from the restroom. The shower water is all brown. Mike reassures us that it's probably just rust, but that doesn't explain the garbage smell. We decide to check the water cistern that's located a ways out from the house, maybe 25 or 30 yards out. It's pitch black out, but the full moon provides us some light. The visibility is poor. We bring lanterns and flashlights along. Tay and I climb up on top to check the top ceiling gauges. Everything looks normal. We open up the seal. Everything is normal again. Tay and I are up on the cistern, about 15 feet off the ground. As we're climbing down, Garrett yells that he saw something dart along the tree line. His idiot yell caught us off guard, and Tay ends up planting his foot directly on the side of my face instead of the ladder rung. I fell down, not enough to injure me, but enough to tick me off a little bit. Garrett's saying he saw something reflect the light as he shined his light along the tree line. I asked Herb if he saw anything. He said that, to be honest, he wasn't paying attention. I tell him that it must have been... Actually, I realized that I didn't know what it could have been. What kind of animal would be out tonight? A raccoon or a fox, most likely. We noticed how profoundly quiet that it was, just standing there, scanning the tree line. There was no crickets or sound, only wind rustling the redwoods and pines. I felt a few goosebumps. I can't say the same for the rest of them, though. Mike came out and told us to come inside. We let the water run for a few minutes. The smell eventually disappeared. Everyone got a shower and headed off to bed, except Mike and I. We chatted in the kitchen, away from the others. For a guy my father entrusted our property to, I barely knew him. It's always hard to sleep the first few nights, he said. I asked him what he meant. He said, being here. He was pretty knowledgeable about the area. He spent most of his time by the lake fishing or hitting the trails. I still felt a bit uneasy from tonight. I asked him if this region had any particular interesting facts. I was subtly prying for information. He mentioned that the whole county was once Indian territory. I wish I could remember the names of all the tribes, but I unfortunately don't, and this definitely should have been a red flag, but I brushed it off. I decided I was getting tired, said goodnight, and I went off to bed. I was bedded next to Elle, and I dozed off. The car alarm in my SUV goes off. I use my cell phone as a light and find my car keys to press the lock to silence the alarms. It was all quiet, except for the wind against the window panes. Everyone must be still asleep, so I laid back down. Unfortunately, my mind was still racing. I checked the time. It's 4 a.m. I just have to wait, I guess, because I can't fall asleep. The morning is uneventful. We have breakfast. Everyone's organizing their things and preparing to walk down to the lake. There's not many people, just a few boaters. I'm having a good time in general. I think we all are. Herb suggests that we put those case of guns and ammo to good use and go planking. I tell him that we'll do it when we head back. We stay at the lake for a little bit because the girls weren't done and want to stay a little longer. Herb is flirting with Amray. The guy has a poor history with women and is very socially inept. Herb walks off. He never did handle rejection too well. Now here's where things seem to escalate. Herb was gone for a while. We decided whether we ought to just wait for him here or head back and hope he figures it out. We waited and waited some more. It was 3:45 now. We chose the latter. We end up going back to the lodge and we see Herb sitting on the porch waiting for us. He's grinning all weird like an idiot, and we're wondering, where was he? He says, hey, we should put those guns to good use and go plinking. So I change into some clothes that are more appropriate for hiking. Herb didn't change. He's still in swim trunks, sitting on the porch steps, head turned, watching us. I think, whatever, he's weird anyways, so it's probably just something. I grabbed the Plano cases and ammo cans. Tay tells Herb to change out of his now dirty clothes. There's no reply. We're walking down to the forest trail, and we notice that Herb is really lagging behind. He's wearing sandals, and his leg movements are just off. It's like he's stomping over every rock and elevated ground. Elle asks me where we're going. To be honest, I was unsure myself. I was just planning on walking until we found an ideal spot along the trail that we could set up some targets on. So we find a good spot, we start plinking away at the targets, and I notice that Herb has been a little distant still. I ask him if he wants to try. He declines. He starts flirting with Amory again, asking her to go for a walk. He gets declined, but doesn't mutter under his breath or just sulk and walk off. He just stares blankly at us. His shoulders tighten up. It's starting to get dark, so I decide that we should head back. He's lagging behind, and he's not even carrying anything. So we keep walking back to the lodge or cabin or whatever, and by this point, I turn my head to look at him, and he's 20 feet behind us. But we just say, whatever, and we just keep walking. He's getting noticeably farther and farther behind us. I yell back to tell him not to fall behind. I look back again, and I see him crouched on one knee. I figure, whatever, he's being weird. He'll catch up. He's an adult. The trees are thinning as we exit the tree line. I see two figures on the porch. It's Mike and Herb. Except Herb isn't wearing his swim trunks. How the hell did he get ahead of us? Now, Herb has done something like this before. Back in high school, he was a big fan of Halloween, and he would love to find weird ways to circumvent the campus and pop out from a corner or pop out from another way or something. He yells to us, "You guys left me at the lake. What the hell?" I tell him this is impossible. All of us look really confused. I tell him that we're sorry and that we at least waited for him when he stormed off. We think it's a bit weird, but I try to change the mood, and me and Tay joke about the girls going in to make us dinner, which is a total joke if you know us, because Tay is actually a super good cook. So we decide to have dinner on the patio, and we enjoy the evening. The food isn't ready, so I start cleaning the guns that we shot. Garrett and Herb are lighting up cigarettes nearby. The girls are giggling and talking about whatever girls talk about. I'm just scrubbing the barrels down thoroughly and oiling any moving parts. I smell this odor. Iron, decay, something like that. It must be the gun cleaning chemicals, so I set them down and I walk off a few feet until it clears. I realize now that it's stronger. I take shallow breaths and feel like retching. Garrett and Herb smell it too now. It overwhelms the cigarette smoke. We can't eat out here with that smell, so we pick up our guns, the parts, and cleaning materials and head inside. Britt says that there's a smell coming from the restroom. It's the same metallic smell with decay. I ask Mike if it's the plumbing. Could it be the septic tank or the leach field? Mike went to his room and brings out an over-under shotgun. I didn't realize he had one. He just says, "You never know." And I think, oh, okay, that's weird. And then he steps out the door. I decide to go with him. And man, was it ever dark out there. The moon was out, but it wasn't much help this time on account of the trees. Mike tells me to stick by him. He said it's easy to get disoriented out here at night. I'm starting to become paranoid, like I'm being watched, and I'm starting to imagine things. Like every imperceptible noise is louder. I should have brought along a rifle. I'm kicking myself mentally. The odor hangs in the air. It's getting on my nerves. Mike's nose is scrunched. I shine my lantern and flashlight around, walking on the dirt road leading from the cabin out to the septic. There's not a word spoken between us. Mike stops and directs me to shine the light at the tree line to our left. As I did, I heard movement, but I didn't see a damn thing. Mike had his shotgun shouldered, and just like that, the smell dissipated. I ask him what it was. He says, "Maybe just a raccoon. I think we should go back. The smell is gone anyways." I hear a noise to my right from the tree line while walking back. I shine my light. I say, "Mike, there's something over here. You're the one who's got the gun, man." We keep our eyes fixated to the right along the tree line. We start hearing this guttural sound behind us. I tense up and do a quick 180. It's Herb, except he's standing in the middle, a few yards to the tree line. He's so pale that it stands out in the darkness, just standing there with that same grin on his face, just still wearing the dirty swim trunks. I say, "Dude, what the hell are you out here for?" There's no reply. We just stare at each other, and then he says, "You guys left me." We're standing there staring at each other. Something is definitely not right. This thing is not Herb. It bolts in the direction that we were headed, back toward the cabin. Mike swears and starts running parallel to the tree line. I'm running at full sprint, chasing after the both of them, but I'm busy keeping my eye to the ground to keep track of where I'm going. I seem to have lost him. Herb, that is. I run us back both to the edge of the cabin. We barge back into the cabin to find Herb chain-smoking with Garrett and everyone waiting for us. I ask if anyone came into the cabin. Everyone shakes their head no. I tell Herb that we need to talk. I ask him some questions. He says that he's been inside the whole time. Garrett and the others vouch for him. I gather up the men, and I explain the weird stuff that we saw, the smells. We agree that something's weird, off. We consider our options. We can stay the full week and let the girls have their fun. We can hunt whatever it is out there, or try to. Or we can leave, head back, or just go somewhere else. We have 3 guns, 4 with Mike's. In hindsight, we made a bad decision. One spurred on by male teenage confidence. See, it is. Someone asks about the girls. I say that we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So we eat dinner, and everyone else seems to be having a good time. Mike and I are silent. The rest of the night is uneventful. After dinner, we just go to bed. I, of course, wake up to the car alarm once again. I immediately know the cause this time. I find the car keys and turn the alarm off. There's absolute silence. I lay my head back down, wide awake. Tay sits up from across the room. He whispers, "Did you hear that?" Somebody was on the porch. We couldn't see outside. It was too dark, and the blinds are drawn. There's a rasping noise, and then a thump. And I think, please, just let it be an animal this time. We both discreetly get out of bed, go for the guns that are located by the front door. Tay and I are both crouching in the hallway in front of the door, weapons in hand. I have a scopeless PSL 54. Tay has a Remington 1100. We sit there quietly, focused on the front door. The rasping ceases. The thumping ceases. The silence is more nerve-wracking than the noise were. I feel like vomiting. My heart is skipping beats. I've begun trembling. I'm scared crapless. I whisper, "Where is this thing? Why isn't it making a move?" And then we both hear something run across the roof. We race to the kitchen patio door, just about tripping over some bags and causing mostly everyone to wake up. I shout to everyone to stay where they are and for the guys to get flashlights and the other gun. The girls are confused as to why we're acting and scrambling like this. We've been trying to keep them out of the loop as long as possible. but I guess not anymore. We get out into the patio, still too dark to see anything. We use the flashlights and lanterns to sweep the darkness. We decide that it's best to go back inside and stay within sight of each other. The girls demand an explanation. I start talking and recounting the stuff that's occurred. I get laughed at by Britt and Frey. Having always been the most superstitious type is freaking out, huddling with Tay. Elle and her sister Amri are just blankly listening. Britt says, "So you guys are gonna hunt whatever it is out there. I want to see this. I think you've been in the city for too long." I tell Garrett to try to explain it better to his girlfriend. We contemplate leaving immediately. Mike steps up, tells us that there are hotels that the girl can stay at, but the distance is about 60 miles out in Weaverville. The only option is to keep the girl safe and out of the way. We wait until sunup and we have a light breakfast. We pile the girls into the second car and send them off. This is the only time I'll leave my wallet with any of them. And I think, well, now what? We spend a good amount of time during the morning sweeping the woods in formation. Herb, since he doesn't have a gun, just has a shovel or entrenching tool. It's around noon. We must have walked down the trail a good few times, so we start heading back. We return back to the cabin by 3 p.m. and settle in. We're all bored out of our minds. We have 2 people looking outside the windows and we rotate them. We have lunch and discuss our predicament. I'm kinda mad that this trip has turned into this. Garrett wants to tie whoever or whatever it is up and snuff out his cigarettes on it. Herb is joking about Sasquatch or Chupacabra or whatever, and Tay just seems to want to go with the girls. Mike appreciates the help and the company, but yeah. Did we have a plan at all at this point? No, you're damn right we didn't. So we start thinking. We could bait it with spare meat in the fridge, light a fire pit, and put those unused tents to good use. Or we could just annoy the shit out of it by blasting obnoxious music with our stereos directed toward the woods. Patrolling the woods was a waste of time, but obviously this thing has been coming to us the whole thing. We end up not doing anything into the evening, just sitting around, playing cards and listening to music. And then, the power goes out. Our flashlights turn on and we use the lanterns to illuminate the rooms to a limited effect. Mike thinks the breaker box must have tripped, and the main circuit breaker box is outside, around the house. And we're thinking, okay, we have to go out and get that on. Who volunteers? No one. Okay, we all have to go. It ends up being me and Mike again. We leave Tay and his brother inside so that they can continue to watch the door and window. We reach the breaker box and there's definitely nothing right about it. All the breakers have been tripped by hand. We are crapping our pants. We commence to resetting them to limited result. Half the lights in the house are back on. Garrett shouts an obscenity addressed at whatever it was out there. Basically, he's offered the person or thing or whatever it is out there one good sodomizing, compliments of him. We crack a few laughs. It definitely helped the mood. Aside from this, not much happened afterwards. Every now and then, we would hear a guttural yell or something would bang on the door or dart off into the woods. But there was no shootout. There was no running off into the dark in pursuit of quarry. We loaded up the car in the morning. We had about enough of the place. We drove to Weaverville to meet up with the girls. We treated Mike to breakfast, and we asked him if he would like to come with us. He declined, actually, and wanted to be dropped off back at the cabin, despite all the recent happenings. The man's got a pair of balls on him, I'll give him that. I spend the next few days in Kern County, camping out there. We return home, drop off our friends, and unpack. Dad asks how the trip was. I tell him everything. I asked him about why we moved down here, and about Mike. He says, well, now you know. It's a pretty cryptic resolution, but but they said that Mike was a drifter that they welcomed into their lives and put a roof over his head. And he gets to stay there so they don't have to worry about it. My friends and I went our separate ways to college. Occasionally, when time permits, we get together, but we aren't going to go back there. We don't talk about it in depth unless one of us is drunk. So, what'd you think of those encounters? Let me know down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? I have an email in the description below, along with a PayPal and a Patreon if you want to donate to the channel or send in your encounter or story. If you like the video and enjoy what I do here, then definitely don't forget to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I thank you all for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.